Chapter 23. Edward, they found us. I blinked my eyes, shaking off the sense of shock, and spurred myself into action. I gripped Bella around the waist and stood, reaching above me and grasped the thin material of the tent. The morning light glinted off my skin as the tattered fabric fell around us. The scent is getting stronger. He's here, and if he is, then she will be with him. He would never leave her in the care of another. I had so hoped to have the opportunity to destroy her myself. Bella gasped and looked at me, but my focus was on Seth. We needed a plan of attack, and fast. There were 2 of them, but there were also 2 of us. They expected me to be here, but not Seth. What should we do? We need a plan. I nodded toward the trees, hoping Seth would understand my meaning. If we had any hope of success, we needed to turn the tables and take the element of surprise away from Victoria and her friend. Seth's eyes widened. Ambush, right. Go, Seth, I whispered. He turned and bolted toward the trees. I gripped Bella's waist and spun her around, barricading her against the mountainside. There was no way for them to get to her except through me. Her breathing was ragged, and her heart beat furiously in her chest. I watched the trees, waiting for them to appear. I felt Bella's hand tentatively reach out to my shoulder. Who? She whispered. Victoria, I hissed. She's not alone. She crossed my scent, following the newborns in to watch. She never meant to fight with them. She made a spur-of-the-moment decision to find me, guessing that you would be wherever I was. She was right. You were right. It was always Victoria. Bella stopped breathing for several seconds at the mention of Victoria's name. My body tensed as I watched through Victoria's eyes, saw the camp come into view. I instinctively looked in the direction and caught a glimpse of fire, Victoria's red hair. I should have listened to Bella. I should have given more credence to the idea that it could have been Victoria behind it all. I silently cursed myself for not giving the option more consideration. They won't threaten her any longer. I will destroy them for her. Just up ahead. I see them now. And her. My plan. Seamless. A young blonde male vampire emerged first, his crimson eyes blazing with hatred, and following closely behind was Victoria. A growl rumbled in my chest at the sight of them. It's her. This is it. She's mine. Riley will deal with him. Victoria, blinded by hatred and a thirst for revenge, focused her attention solely on Bella. I got the distinct impression that her partner had accompanied her solely to deal with me. Potentially leaving Bella would never happen. I would sooner allow myself to be destroyed than allow them to touch one hair on her precious head. I kept my eyes trained on the 2 vampires, my attention torn between their thoughts and the thoughts of the wolf pack. Seth was relaying the details of our predicament to Sam. I heard a howl rip through the air from the clearing as Leah fretted over the danger her baby brother was now in, but her worries ceased the moment Sam ordered her to focus. Riley's head shifted to the side, his eyes seeking instruction from Victoria. I will destroy him for you, my love. Now? She jutted out her chin, gesturing to me. Now. Riley, I whispered, getting the attention of the young vampire, whose eyes widened when I called his name. I couldn't fight them both at once, but if I could confuse Riley, throw him off his game, it would give us the opportunity we needed for Seth to attack. I don't know him. How did he... She's lying to you, Riley, I continued. Listen to me. She's lying to you just like she lied to the others who are dying now in the clearing. You know that she lied to them, that she had you lie to them, that neither of you were ever going to help them. Is it so hard to believe that she lied to you too? I took a step to the side, gauging how Riley would react. He shifted, his move matching mine. If I could get enough distance between Riley and Victoria, it would give Seth the perfect opportunity to attack. No, it's not true. He shook his head. She loves me. She told me so. Look at everything I've done for her. Everything I've done to earn her love. It took her a while, but she has to love me. His brow furrowed as he argued against me in his mind. His weight shifted subtly to the balls of his feet. She doesn't love you, Riley. She never has. She loved someone named James. and you're no more than a tool to her." "How dare you say his name?" Victoria bared her teeth, and the fire in her eyes blazed like an inferno. Her entire body tensed. She was ready to throw her entire plan out of the window and lunge for us. "Who's James? He couldn't be telling the truth, could he?" Riley turned his face to Victoria. "What is he talking about? It can't be. She loves me. Me. Her diffidence was all in my head, right?" "Riley," I whispered. He whipped his head around to face me again, clearly torn between his feelings for Victoria and the truth in the back of his mind that she didn't love him in return. "She knows I will kill you, Riley. She wants you to die so she doesn't have to keep up the pretense anymore." His eyes widened, knowing that I was right. He had seen it. "Yes, you've seen that, haven't you? You've read the reluctance in her eyes, speculated a false note in her promises. You were right. She never wanted you. Every kiss, every touch was a lie." I inched forward slightly, still keeping Bella safely behind me. I could hear her labored breathing, her hammering heart. I could smell the fear, the adrenaline coursing through her veins, but I pushed it to the back of my mind, focusing all my attention on Riley. He was about to break. I could see it. His reactions were faltering, his focus wavering. I hoped that Seth could see it too. "You don't have to die," I whispered. "There are other ways to live than the way she's shown you. It's not all lies and blood, Riley. You can walk away right now. You don't have to die for her lies." "But he will. He's blinded by love, just like you are." "No, it can't be. Why doesn't she say anything? Argue against him?" I shifted once again, Riley's movements no longer mirroring mine. There was a widening gap between Riley and Victoria. It was almost time. I cocked my head to the side, hoping Seth would see the gesture and understand. "I see it," Seth thought. "They're both on edge. Just a few seconds more." "Last chance, Riley," I warned. "No, it's not true. Tell him it's not true." Riley's face was torn as he divided his attention between me and Victoria. "He's a liar, Riley," she hissed. "I told you about their mind tricks. You know I love only you." "Of course, I knew it. He will suffer even more for that." Riley turned back to me, shifting his weight, preparing to attack. The venom dripped from his bared teeth. Victoria, just behind him, was waiting for me to move, to give her the slightest opening. It would never happen. "Now," I whispered. Riley cocked his head to the side in confusion. "Now!" he shouted in his head, as he barreled out of the trees and lunged right for Riley, knocking him to the ground. "No!" Victoria screamed. "It can't be!" Riley screamed as Seth's teeth tore at him, ripping a chunk from his left hand and tossing it aside. "Victoria, do something! Help me, please!" Victoria trembled with rage, her fingers flexing like talons, ready to strike. With Riley distracted, now was my chance to end Victoria once and for all. I took a determined step toward her. "No!" she hissed. "She's mine! She won't escape me again!" Out of the corner of my eye, I watched as Seth continued to lunge and snap at Riley. Seth may be young, but he was a natural fighter, going on pure instinct. I was thankful that Riley was older, not as strong as the other newborns. It was a decided factor in Seth's favor. Riley scrambled to his feet, jumping back, allowing enough space for a kick to Seth's shoulder. "Ouch!" Seth yelped as his shoulder dislocated. He circled around Riley, taking a moment to press his arm against a boulder and snap his shoulder back into place. I focused my attention on Victoria, shifting once again, her movements matching mine. We were mirror images of each other, each one shifting with the other, neither willing to give up any ground. Her mind was working furiously, trying to find a way around me, a way to Bella, but I could see her moves before she made them. She may have been able to escape me once, but today would be a different story entirely. She would not get away from me again. A sickening crunch echoed in my ears. followed by the clattering sound of vampire flesh as it skidded across the rock. "I've got this," Seth thought. "You focus on the redhead." Victoria took several steps back, ducking behind tree trunks, searching for an opening. "It's not safe," she thought. "But I have to have her. Can't let her escape." She was struggling with the classic fight-or-flight scenario, but Victoria had a distinct disadvantage. Because of her ability to escape, her body naturally avoided any danger, seeking only a means of escape. She was fighting against her nature, desperately wanting to run, but wanting to destroy Bella with the same fervor. "Don't go, Victoria," I whispered. "You'll never get another chance like this." "You're wrong," she hissed, her body tensing as she continued to resist the urge to run. "You can always run later," I spoke in a low voice. "Plenty of time for that. It's what you do, isn't it? It's why James kept you around. Useful if you like playing deadly games. A partner with an uncanny instinct for escaping. He shouldn't have left you. He could have used your skills when we caught up to him in Phoenix." "How dare you!" She stiffened, a loud snarl echoing through the trees. "You didn't know him like I did. He loved me." The corner of my lip twitched into a smug smirk, realizing that she was doing to Riley exactly what James had done to her. They were both but a means to an end, a convenience. James had used her, promising love in return, and she had done the same to Riley. "That's all you ever were to him, though," I continued. "Silly to waste so much energy avenging someone who had less affection for you than a hunter for his mount. You were never more than a convenience to him. I would know." I reached up, placing a finger against my temple, my smile growing wider. "Liar!" Her eyes darkened, and she quaked with anger. She shifted over, looking again for an opening to Bella. I compensated to match her movement, and she hissed in frustration. Her eyes flickered briefly to the confrontation between Seth and Riley. "That's right," she thought. "Push the monster closer. Use him as a distraction." As though she and Riley were of the same mind, he pushed Seth back, slowly pushing him where Bella and I were standing. I could feel the heat coming off Seth's skin as he edged closer to me. "Just a little further, and we'll have them. But the girl is mine." Seth took another step back, his tail close enough to brush against me. "I've got this, Edward," Seth thought. "No matter what happens, you keep your focus on the female. She's the one you need to worry about." "Why isn't he attacking? The wolf would never allow his back to be open to another vampire. It doesn't make sense." "No, he won't turn on me," I answered. Her eyes widened in revelation. "You provided us with a common enemy. You allied us." I took a step toward her. She seemed to be frozen with shock. "Preposterous!" Her eyes shifted from the wolf to me, from me to Riley, and from Riley to the salvation of escape behind her. She seemed torn between her desire for Bella and her terror of the wolf she now knew was my ally. A shudder of dread rippled through her as a memory played out in her mind, a memory of a wolf, a monstrous beast that she and James were tracking. The flashes of their fight were intense, and although they escaped with their lives, they were not unscathed. She reached up, rubbing the spot on her arm where the wolf's teeth had torn into her flesh. The memory was so vivid that she could still feel the sensation of its teeth ripping and tearing into her arm, and the sting of reattachment after the fight, as James had helped put her back together. "Look more closely, Victoria," I taunted. "Is he really so much like the monster James tracked across Siberia?" The images in her mind began shuffling back and forth between the monster she knew and the one in front of her, her desires conflicting even more with one another as her fear increased. "Not the same," she hissed, unsure of her words. "Impossible." "Nothing is impossible," I whispered, arching an eyebrow. "Except what you want. You'll never touch her." I took another step toward Victoria, but she was frozen on the spot. She shook with fury as she lunged for me, her hands reaching out in front of her, grasping at the air in a helpless attempt to get Bella. "Mine!" I shifted just far enough to block her path, and she recoiled in a crouch. She arched back, on the balls of her feet, preparing to strike. One small step forward. I matched it with my own. I was beginning to grow weary of this dance. I could feel the rage boil up in the pit of my stomach, the hatred I felt for this vampire before me, all the pain she had caused Bella. I would end this, and I would end it now. Seth had Riley preoccupied, and I had Victoria's full attention. Her fury transferred from Bella to me. She could see that there was no way to get to Bella as long as I was still standing. With me out of the way, it would be too easy to get to her. This time, it was I who made the sudden move, a determined strike as I lunged for Victoria. I linked my mind with hers, seeing her moves before she could make them. She was skilled, agile like a cat, easily evading my attempts to reach her, but she was faltering. Her emotions were getting the better of her, clouding her judgment and impairing her concentration. I reached out, grasping for the fabric of Victoria's garment, and it shredded through my fingers as she jerked away, hissing at the proximity. She was edging backward, still fighting the urge to run. "Come on, Victoria," I whispered. "You can do better than this. James would expect more from you." She shrieked in anger. "You have no right to say his name. He was easily 100 times the man you'll ever hope to be." She tensed. The muscles in her legs coiled as she prepared to spring. She lunged for me, her teeth reaching out for my neck, but I thrust a hand out, sending her backward. Her feet skidded on the rock, and she hissed, lunging for me again. Again I deflected her attack, and again. She screamed in aggravation, and lunged yet again. I reached out, gripping her arm in the same spot she had been rubbing earlier. She howled with fury as I held her arm in a vice. She twisted, ripping her arm from my grasp. A shower of glittering fragments floated to the ground, and she looked down in horror at the trail my fingers had left on her flesh. I took the chance to attack, but she slipped past me by mere inches. It wouldn't be much longer. With each failed attempt, each swipe of my arms, she was losing herself in emotions. Her sense of self-preservation was suffering because her fury had completely taken over, clouding her senses. I grabbed for her again, gripping a chunk of her hair, and she screamed as it ripped from her scalp. Her eyes widened as she looked at her red locks still clenched in my fist, and her hand shot up to her head, feeling the place where they had once been. "You'll pay for that!" she screamed furiously, lunging forward and barreling into me, the clash of our bodies smacking together, echoing loudly. She tried to wrap her arms around my neck, but I pushed her off before she could get a grip on me. She fell backward, landing on the balls of her feet like a cat. She crouched down, hissing through her teeth, and barreled toward me again. I moved inches aside, and she passed by me, but I twisted, gripping her around the waist and flinging her against a nearby tree. The tree groaned under the impact and splintered as it broke in two, crashing to the ground. The sound of shattering rock behind me indicated that Seth's fighting had also increased intensely, but his thoughts continually assured me that he had the situation under control. Even when Riley's thoughts turned to triumph, believing he had bested his foe, Seth assured me that it was all part of his plan. I forced myself to remain focused, unwilling to allow my emotions to impair me as Victoria and Riley had. Victoria lunged, her teeth barely grazing the skin of my neck before I pushed her at arm's length. She struggled to get to me, her strength nearly matching my own, as she tried to force me to submit. I spun her around, jerking my knee up between us and pushing her back. I heard a distant crack as she stumbled backward. She groaned, clutching her midsection, her eyes on fire. "This ends now!" She crouched low, preparing to spring once again, when the sound of a gasp filled the sudden silence. "What was that?" It was Bella. I would know her voice anywhere. For the briefest moment, I focused on Seth and Riley's thoughts, refusing to take my eyes off Victoria. Bella stood, wide-eyed and trembling, among a pile of splintered rock. The brace hung limply from her damaged hand, and she clutched a shard of rock in her fist so tightly that her knuckles were white. She was pressing the rock to her forearm, the tip turning the skin around the indentation white from the pressure. The blood beneath the rock beat furiously as it prepared to escape through the impending wound. The third wife, of course. Bella would be worried for us, wanting to do something, just as she had told me she wanted to do her part in the clearing. She was doing what she thought she could. I breathed a sigh, wishing she could have more confidence in me. Did she have any idea how dangerous that could be, to spill her blood with 3 vampires present? What is she doing?
The blood, so sweet. I can almost taste it.
Victoria and Riley were both equally distracted by Bella's display. Seth saw it too. I edged backward and kicked my leg out, sending Victoria once again crashing into a tree. In that same moment I spun around, gripping Riley by the arm and placing my foot on his back for leverage. He screamed in agony as I pushed off, taking his arm with me.
"My arm! You'll pay for that!"
Riley howled in agony.
"Now's my chance."
I whipped my head around just in time to see Victoria sprinting toward me, hoping to take advantage of the open space between Bella and myself. I flung Riley's arm forward. It smacked Victoria in the face, sending her backward into the trees.
"No!"
she growled as she landed on her feet, kicking Riley's arm out of her way. It whistled past my head before I heard it clattering against the mountainside.
"Useless! He's utterly useless!"
Seth's thoughts turned smug as he removed Riley's other arm and tossed it into the forest. Riley screamed in agony, his eyes searching for Victoria, but hers were locked with mine.
"Victoria," he pleaded, "please help me. Love, don't let them do this to me."
Victoria didn't falter when her companion begged for her help. I could almost hear the sound of Riley's heart breaking, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The woman he loved, the woman he trusted, had used him, and he was finally aware of her treachery. Seth howled in triumph as Riley gave up the fight, losing the will to continue. It was ironic that the death blow to Riley didn't come from Seth or me, but from Victoria herself.
"Fool,"
she thought as she narrowed her eyes at me.
"I'll be back. I'll never stop coming back. I'll get by you one day."
She glanced back, planning her escape, her face contorted in pain, angry that she had failed once again to avenge James's death. She looked past me, seeing Bella was still unharmed. She took a determined step backward, edging herself toward the tree line, but there was no escape from her. She would not survive this day. I wouldn't allow it. "No," I whispered. "Stay just a little longer." With that, she spun around and broke into a sprint, running in the opposite direction, away from danger. But I was one step ahead of her. I pushed off the moment she moved, confident that I would best her speed. She was not nearly as cunning in her escape as she would have been were her emotions not impacted.
"No!"
she shuddered as I caught her around the waist, constricting her arms in my grip. There was no escape for her now. I pulled back her hair, exposing her neck. She trembled.
"Please, no, please!"
I leaned into her ear, grazing the lobe with my teeth. "Fectum est," I whispered. She breathed a defeated sigh and closed her eyes. My teeth sank into the flesh of her neck, and with one swift jerk her head fell to the ground. Her body slumped forward, twitching, searching for its missing part. Without a moment's hesitation, I made quick work of breaking apart the rest of her body for burning, assuring that she could never come back. I stooped to gather the broken pieces in my arms. I stood and closed my eyes, breathing a sigh of relief. It was over, and Bella was safe. I felt a swell of satisfaction in my chest, knowing that I had been the one to save her, to destroy her enemy. My thoughts turned to Bella. What must she think of me after witnessing that? I was afraid to see her face, to look into her eyes and see the horror, the look I had been expecting to see since the moment we met. Instead, I focused on my work. I dropped all that remained of Victoria in a pile and gathered tinder to start a fire. "Edward, can you give me a hand?" Seth thought. I followed his scent and found him gathering up the pieces that were left of Riley. I felt a twinge of pity for the young vampire that had been duped into love by a bitter sociopath. It was a shame that so many had to die because of Victoria's lies. I bent down, gathering several pieces in my arms, and returned to place them on the quivering pile. I lit the dry pine needles and watched as the small flame became a blazing bonfire. A purple plume of smoke rose from the pyre, and I could hear the sizzling sound of venom evaporating under the intense heat. "Get every piece," I muttered to Seth. Side by side, we gathered the remains of the 2 vampires. While we worked, Seth relayed to me the information from the wolf pack. The battle was over, and we had all survived relatively unscathed. I turned to him when we finished, a smile spreading across my face. "Nice," Seth thought. "And they said I was too young." I stretched out my fist, and Seth bumped it with his nose. "Nice teamwork," I nodded. With our enemies destroyed, and the battle in the field over, there was nothing left to do, save for the one thing that terrified me most. I had to face Bella. I slowly turned to face her. Her expression was a mixture of shock and confusion. Her fist was still clenched around the jagged stone. "Bella, love," I whispered, walking toward her at a deliberately slow pace. I raised my hands to show her that I meant her no harm, that she was perfectly safe with me. "Bella, can you drop the rock, please?" Her eyes flickered to her clenched fist. She stared at it, almost in a daze. "Carefully, don't hurt yourself." She continued to stare at her hand, unmoving. I took several more cautious steps toward her, fearful that she may inadvertently harm herself if she tried to run from me. Her lip trembled as her finger twitched, sending the stone shard clattering to the mountain floor. "You don't have to be afraid, Bella," I whispered. "You're safe. I won't hurt you." Her brow furrowed, and her eyes flickered to mine. "It's going to be all right, Bella." She took a step toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. Her actions and her words didn't make sense to me. She looked absolutely terrified. "What's wrong?" she pressed. "What do you mean?" Aren't you afraid of me?" I stammered. She cocked her head to the side. "Afraid of you? Why?" She took another step forward, the toe of her left foot catching on a crack in the rock, and she tumbled toward me. My hand shot out, catching her before she could fall to the ground. She leaned into me, and her entire body began to shudder. The scent of salt water filled my nose as she began to cry. "Bella, Bella, I'm so sorry." I wrapped my arms around her, cradling her head against my chest, stroking her hair. "It's over. It's over." "I'm fine," she choked out between sobs. "I'm okay. I'm just freaking out. Give me a minute. A minute." I pulled her tighter to me, wishing I could have shielded her from the horrors she had witnessed just moments ago. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, kissing her hair, stroking her face. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, until her heart began to slow and her breathing returned to normal. I closed my eyes, wishing I could take the pain away, wishing she didn't have to see me for what I truly was. My eyes opened as I felt her lips press against my chest. She peppered kisses along my neck, and I leaned down, pressing my lips to her forehead. "Are you okay?" she murmured. "Did she hurt you at all?" That was what she was afraid of? Not afraid of me, but afraid for me. She had told me all along that her greatest fear was losing me. How could I not have seen that? How could I not realize that I was forcing her to face down her greatest fear? "I'm absolutely fine," I assured her, nuzzling her neck. "Seth?" she asked. "More than fine," I chuckled, looking up toward Seth. Very pleased with himself, in fact. "And the others? Alice, Esme, the wolves?" "All fine. It's over there, too. It went just as smoothly as I promised. We got the worst of it here." She was silent for a moment, and I closed my eyes, thankful that I had been able to keep her safe. A great weight was lifted from my shoulders as I realized that everyone I loved was safe. The months of agonizing over the dangers were over.
"Tell me why," Bella murmured. "Why did you think I would be afraid of you?"
I leaned back so I could see her eyes. I reached a hand up, lightly caressing her cheek. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch. "I'm sorry," I whispered, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. "So sorry. I didn't want you to see that. See me like that. I know I must have terrified you."
"Seriously?"
She arched an eyebrow.
"You what? Thought you had scared me off?"
"Of course. What rational human being wouldn't be running and screaming after witnessing such horrors?" I lifted her chin, searching her eyes for understanding. Perhaps she was still in shock, and didn't realize the enormity of what she had just witnessed. "Bella, I just beheaded and dismembered a sentient creature not 20 yards from you. That didn't bother you?" She shrugged.
"Not really. I was only afraid that you and Seth were going to get hurt. I wanted to help, but there was only so much I could do."
My temper flared as I recalled what Bella had done, what she had tried to do. "Yes," I hissed. "Your little stunt with the rock. You know you nearly gave me a heart attack. Not an easy thing to do, that."
"I wanted to help," she stammered. "Seth was hurt."
"Seth was only feigning that he was hurt, Bella," I sighed. "It was a trick. And then you—" I still couldn't believe that she had tried to take matters into her own hands, that she would spill her own blood as a distraction. "Seth couldn't see what you were doing," I continued, "so I had to step in. Seth's a bit disgruntled that he can't claim a single-handed defeat now." "Yeah, I almost had him," Seth thought to himself. Bella's eyes widened in surprise.
"Seth was faking?"
I nodded.
"Oh."
She winced, realizing her error. She turned her head to look at Seth. We both seemed to have a new appreciation for the youngest member of the wolf pack.
"Well, I didn't know that,"
she said, turning back to me.
"It's not easy being the only helpless person around. Just you wait until I'm a vampire. I'm not going to be sitting on the sidelines next time."
I searched her face, wondering if I had heard her correctly. When she became a vampire? Her offhanded comment spoke volumes. She wanted to change, which would mean that she still wanted to be with me. "Next time?" I asked. "Do you anticipate another war soon?"
"With my luck, who knows?"
I rolled my eyes, brushing my thumb across her lips. All the worries seemed to melt away all at once. The newborns, Victoria, Jacob.
"Hold on."
Bella held up one finger.
"Did you say something before?"
She thought for a moment before continuing.
"About a complication? And Alice needing to nail down the schedule for Sam? You said it was going to be close. What's going to be close?"
"She doesn't know," Seth thought.
"But you need to start making your way there, if Alice's predictions are correct."
Alice's predictions were always correct, at least until someone changed their mind. My feeling of elation was completely deflated. I had nearly forgotten all about the Volturi's impending arrival.
"Well?"
she asked, arching an eyebrow expectantly. "It's nothing, really," I hedged, downplaying the potential danger. I wasn't sure she could endure any more today. "But we need to be on our way." I turned, pulling Bella onto my back. She pulled away, placing a hand on her hip.
"Define nothing,"
she demanded. I reached up, cupping her face in my hands. "We only have a minute, so don't panic, all right?" Her eyes widened. "I told you that you had no reason to be afraid. Trust me on that, please." She nodded hesitantly.
"No reason to be afraid. Got it."
I hesitated, hating to subject her to any more threats. We could certainly handle the Volturi, reason with them, but we needed to be there to do it. Would she come willingly, or try to run? I turned my head to Seth. Something in his mind captured my attention. The fight was over, or was it? Through Leah's eyes, I could see a rogue newborn in hiding. She was stalking it, preparing to strike, alone.
If my baby brother can do what he did, this should be a piece of cake. Just a girl. I'll show them.
What is she doing? I asked Seth. Seth whined, worried for his sister. We watched helplessly as Leah stalked her prey, and wondered why the rest of the pack wasn't doing anything. And then I saw it. Jacob. Jacob was watching Leah intently, and realized what she was doing. Just as Leah was about to pounce, the newborn sprang up. Jacob ran forward at full speed and intersected with the newborn to protect his friend, but the trajectory was wrong. He was in grave danger. "No!" I gasped, reaching my hand out as though I could stop him. "Don't!